Ever watched sports ever in their life? All right. So there's a 99.9% chance that you've seen a player who's been using PEDs. PED is short for performance enhancing drugs. And it's truthful to say that the majority of athletes today, whether it be Olympics, whether it be baseball, whether it be football, ice hockey, use them, whether or not they actually get busted for them through tests. So today we are here to educate you and inform you on the prominence of PEDs in all sporting societies and areas. So I will be covering Olympics.
I'll be covering the NFL.
And I'll be covering baseball.
So, to get started off, a performance-enhancing drug is any sort of substance that's taken to improve your athletic performance. Doesn't matter what the sport, what the game, it could be jogging, running, anything.
So, in terms of classifying PEDs, it can be anything from as simple as caffeine to the most dangerous of drugs. And that's really why performance-enhancing drugs is such a gray area for sports right now, because it's tough for them to determine what is safe to take and what isn't.
So there are many different types of PEDs, and they each affect players in different ways, and so players take them for different things. And it's been pretty common throughout sports to use PEDs, and it's a pretty controversial topic because it's pretty tough to actually catch people using them because of random drug testing, and you have to be random when you're going about it. You can't target specific players. So yeah, we're just going to get into the different types of PEDs. Yeah.
All right. So the first one, this is under the subcategory of steroids and everything. A lot of them are steroids. Kind of have a mainly used for like muscle building and everything, because a lot of times like recovery is a huge thing for a lot of athletes, like especially weightlifters, which I'll get into later on the presentation. Anabolic steroids are the most common that are used, especially in like baseball or weightlifting, like I mentioned. So it basically creates like it maximizes the strength building. It maximizes the usefulness of your testosterone when it comes to muscle building, and it also sort of speeds up your recovery time as well. And also HGH, which is the human growth hormone, also falls under this category as well.
Okay, the next one is stimulants. That's something like caffeine, and when you take it, like it'll have an effect on you, more focus, stuff like that.
Yeah, we're not going to spend too much time just for the sake of time on each one, but pretty much no topics are like it pretty much can make you go longer, faster, and stronger. It just gets you more focused into it from a mental standpoint, so you can do something for a longer amount of time.
Let's just move on to
Okay, adaptogens, which are like plants that have like psychedelic effects. There's painkillers, sedatives, like they can decrease anxieties and stress. Blood boosters is like blood doping, and then there's many other types. These two are used for healing injuries, and obviously you can see there's many risks that come with each one.
All right. So on an international scale, the PEDs hold a very prevalent place, especially when it comes to Olympic competition. So to first understand where we stand with PEDs in today's Olympic, the modern era of the Olympics, we have to understand the history to get a better idea of it. So it may come as a surprise to most of you, but performance-enhancing remedies have been fairly common in Olympic sports since 776 BC. When this is all according to Larry D. Bowers from the clinics in sports medicine, and Greek athletes would compete for large amounts of money, olive wreaths, and just like glory within like their own country. So there's a lot on the line, and there's a lot of pressure to compete and perform well. So there's some of the remedies that they used to take back then were opium juice. They were experimental with herbal medications and hallucinogens, and they used to gorge on large amount of meats, just like a straight meat diet, which may include like animal hearts or testicles to like improve like potency. This was just like a theory they had back then about like if you eat another animal, they gain more of their strength. And then later on in 100 AD, the Romans gladiators experimented with hallucinogens and stimulants such as strychnine, which helps fight off fatigue, and that is used like today in a ton of Olympic sports, especially because it is a stimulant. And so they work to fight off fatigue, and this is all according to Rahman Abdulaziz, who is a medical doctor, and he wrote this in his paper about the history of doping. And then late in the 19th and early 20th century, alcohol began to become a larger part of like the doping process, and so they used to mix it with cocoa leaves, which are also a stimulant, but they're not as prevalent as much anymore because of their lack of potency and like effect. But the majority of it was strychnine, which is a very popular stimulant even today, like I said. So the biggest thing about stimulants is it helps increase fatigue and increase like your alertness and awareness, like whenever you're playing a sport or you're running or whatnot. And then later on, the 1950s began to be like the first when all the really most prevalent PEDs started like being developed and everything. The ones that you see today that are really synthesized. And so the first real FDA-approved PED was created by Dr. John Bosley Ziegler. It was an anabolic steroid called Dianabol, and it was intended to maximize the strength-building properties of testosterone while minimizing the negative effects of like fatigue or injury. And so in sports today, the most popular ones are HGH, like I mentioned earlier, which is human growth hormone, which if taken too early during like puberty, it can really stunt your growth cycle, and it's not to be taken like really unless you like really need it for a medical purpose. Anabolic steroids, which I mentioned earlier, which are similar to HGH, that have a lot to do with muscle growth. Stimulants and blood boosters. I'll get into blood boosters a little bit later too. So in Olympic sports, it varies from like decade to decade because newer PEDs keep coming out and everything, and they just keep on being sort of refined and become a lot more potent. And so, in turn, the different uses for different PEDs varies between sports, because you can have a calm sport like archery, where someone might take like Xanax or something that would really like calm them down and like give them steady hands and like take away a lot of nervousness. Also, marijuana is used for that as well. Or if you're like a sprinter, you might take a stimulant to give you like a rush of adrenaline and really kind of like fight off fatigue that you may have like halfway through a race. So, according to data compiled by sportsanddrugs.procon.org, from 1968 to 2010, weightlifting has been the sport with the most doping cases with 36, and track and field athletics with 28, right counted. So, as I mentioned before, weightlifting, the anabolic steroids and HGH are most popular because I mean, the sport is lifting weights, and so you have to build up a lot of muscle. And it's very, very common. If you look through like a timeline, the majority of cases come up with HGH or anabolic steroids. In track and field, athletic stimulants and anabolic steroids are very popular, just to build muscle. Now, high endurance sports require a different kind of PED. So, for cycling, distance running, cross country skiing, you have to have a greater aerobic capacity. It means you can take in a lot more oxygen that is distributed to your muscles a lot differently. So you do blood doping, which according to the WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, it increases the mass of red blood cells in your body to transport more oxygen to your muscles, which leads to an increase in performance and stamina. And so for nearly 2 decades, one of the largest doping scandals that ever like arose out of the Olympics was the East German women's swimming team, who were then involved in an organized system of anabolic steroid use at the hands of their coaches. So it's widely known that the women, for the most part, were unaware that their coaches were sort of experimenting on them, and they went from winning only like 2 gold medals like 4 years before to winning 10 at the next Olympics. So there's obviously like some fishy business going on there. And then much more recently, following the 2012 Olympic Games, Russia's track and field team was claimed to have been operating under a statewide doping program, and this is why they were actually disqualified from, well, they were banned from even competing in the 2016 Rio Olympics, at least their track and field team, that is. And they tried to appeal and overturn the suspension, but ended up not turning out. So it's kind of difficult to understand why such like elite athletes risk their careers by taking PEDs, especially as someone who's an outsider, like all of us are. So, according to a biannual survey conducted from 1982 to 1995 by Robert Goldman, who's a medical doctor, when asked if they could take a drug that guarantees an Olympic gold medal but kills them in 5 years, over half of elite athletes said they would. So this obviously means that doping is happening a lot more than we really know. We only hear about like the larger cases, but many people are getting away with it, especially with like new designer PEDs. This goes to show like the obscene extent that athletes are willing to risk their entire careers and everything they've worked for just for an Olympic gold. So, and according to the IOC, 45 more athletes, 23 being medalists in the 2008 Olympics Games, have been caught for doping after retests of samples from the previous two Olympics. So this is recently new information that just came out earlier this summer before the Rio Olympics. And basically it just gives like a larger perspective as to just how many athletes use PEDs. So as I said before, it's really hard to understand why such elite athletes like risk mind and body to dangerous performance-enhancing drugs, especially when everything they're risking is everything they've ever worked for in their entire life. So that's enough about the Olympics, and taking it back to like more of like an American like centralized idea. Here's Nick with the NFL.